Hi, I'm Mauricio and you're listening to the Schulering Hub, a podcast gathering hospitality professionals from around the world to talk about what hospitality is and what it isn't, and their lives, the innovations, and the ideas that set some businesses apart and others not. We also talk about the future, the trends, and recently we embarked on a journey to search for happiness in hospitality. What makes hospitality a happy place? What are the hurdles that block happiness from happening? And what can we do to overcome them? I invite you to be part of this journey. Comment and send us a message of how our conversation impacts your day. Ask me a question or tell me a guest you'd like to listen to. We make this for you, so I hope you enjoy it.
What got me into hospitality is the storytelling aspect, and I felt that was what was lacking in my career in architecture, is added layer of storytelling and speaking directly to the guests, kind of sharing with them a certain experience. So I think that's where also my love for travel comes from, that same type of sharing other cultures, sharing people's stories.
This is Wäel Mashini from Mashini Design, a consultancy studio specialized in creating innovative hospitality environments through a disruptive design approach.
Design is a very subjective field in general. Of course, there are best practices, but one person can perceive a space as beautiful, the other can perceive it as completely wrong, and design is highly subjective. So the challenge in hospitality design is filtering between all the noise, all the different stakeholders.
We discussed the importance of storytelling in your hotel design and the opportunities and challenges of embracing sustainability and regeneration, and also the evolution of hospitality industry with more niche offerings and subcategories of hotel catering to unique experiences. But before that, Nah-Dja and I continue our quest for happiness in hospitality. Today we're talking about creating exceptional services. Hello everyone! What is exceptional guest experience for you? If you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, you'll be able to answer this question. So do it now. If you're not, just can comment on LinkedIn. Because I have once again Nah-Dja Tien to talk about the quest for happiness in hospitality at the Schulering Hub. Welcome, Nah-Dja.
Hi, Mauricio. Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure to have you. Always good to see your smile. It's a pity that people listening cannot see you, but we're going to get that fixed up at some point, okay? Genia, please get that working. And Nah-Dja, we are talking today about exceptional service. And for guests, like what guests are looking as truly exceptional service in hospitality, I need to think about actually me as a guest, right? Like what I want to when I go to somewhere to feel like I'm always looking for being like recognized. I like to, if I arrive at a restaurant or a hotel, that when I arrive there, someone actually recognizes I'm there. And I like to be welcome. Like there is a motivation behind them to help me to feel that I'm in the right place, in the right city, and I have things to do. They are in control of my experience. And that this behavior also goes across, right? Like when I explain, like last time I was in Gran Canaria and I was in the Emilia Hotel, and it was a great experience. Everywhere I went, everyone smiled. And it was from the housekeeping or the waiters or the chefs in the breakfast room. Everyone was smiling, was helpful. And I was feeling that I was part of that family. I was part of being welcome there. It feels like being in a friend's house, right? And another thing that I think that is really important is that like my expectations for the place are met, right? Like that I'm buying something and I'm getting that or beyond what I paid for. But this is as a guest, but creating this type of service is not an easy job. Otherwise, we would see that everywhere. So what are the key characteristics of exceptional hospitality service to you, Nah-Dja Tien?
Well, one of the things that I have in my head is that you have a no friction stay, with everything from the moment that you book until that you leave. And then during that exceptional stay, you have a few wow moments that really makes you think. And I've been scratching my head for a while, Mauricio, because whatever I did in the past, I opened up many hotels, and 3 of them, they made it to number 1 on TripAdvisor, which means that you're outperforming the whole market wherever you are in guest satisfaction, guest reviews, and only to grow into that algorithm of TripAdvisor and Booking.com means that you constantly deliver better service and is better rewarded by the guests than any other hotel. And I want to put a formula to that. Of course, you need to know what you sell. You need to know what your customers might want. And if you basically go out of your way to get these things correct, and it has to start with the general manager, right? It's the general manager that needs to push it down. But if you get out of your way to get those things correct, then you're already very much on the way. And I read somewhere it's one of those basic truths. If you don't have happy employees, then it's going to be very difficult to give exceptional service. No matter how many SOPs you throw at your staff. So it's all interlinked. And those hotels that I was able to open up, I did things differently. I hired people on, the ability to give exceptional service by themselves. It's much easier to hire somebody that already has, service in their manners, in their way, maybe how they're raised by their parents, than to take somebody that doesn't have it and train them to do it.
And is there something like specific that you could repeat in each one of these hotels that always worked? Some little secret there? Is that like, I don't know, it could be the guest experience, but it could also be a type of technology or something very new that they wouldn't be expecting. Is there something there that you would do it?
Well, when I designed the hotels, because I was lucky enough in my life to make hotels from zero. There was somebody that said, I had a building, what are we going to do with it? And one of the things that I always started with is beds. Because at the end, you go to a hotel to sleep. It's the one thing that you want most. If you have a good breakfast, a good dinner, maybe a spa or a swimming pool, those are other things. But so I would always put, big effort on beds. And I have also examples of what I want. I want to go into the bed completely naked and feel like somebody's hugging me, and it's just nice. That I love. So that is one thing. The next morning when you wake up, the breakfast should be nice as well. If the eggs are already on the buffet for 2 hours, because that's how it is, then they are blue and it's not nice to eat. So I always made a la carte breakfast. Small hotel, I have to say that as well. You know what I always did, Mauricio? To explain to anybody that wanted to work with me, the moment that you make a reservation, you start the journey, towards the hotel. When you arrive at the airport, somebody should stand there with a nice sign with your name perfectly written. You are organizing a surprise for your wife. So at arrival, the taxi driver already tells you, Mauricio, don't worry, everything is organized. What do? You completely relax because you know that somebody knows about it. The taxi driver calls the hotel, Mauricio is coming. By the time you come to the hotel, everybody says, hey, Mauricio, welcome. It's like, this is nice. You come to your room, you have this great bed with these soft sheets and everything is nice, clean. You have your breakfast the next day, you have your perfect cappuccinos, everything. And by the time you go back home, you say, I don't know what happened, but this was an amazing stay. Why? Because everything was without friction and everything worked.
You used it design like an experience that I want to book tomorrow, right? So what I think it's like there is a lot of variables there as well because you involve the people that work with you. And
yes.
What are the biggest challenges in like involving staff and making sure that they will deliver that exceptional experience?
I think that you already mentioned it. You need to involve the people in it. I have standards that I would like to have met. But I also put standards completely upside down. You know, the first hotel that I opened up as a general manager, I made it in English, you don't have it. But when you have the polite form in different languages, I always said, do the unpolite form. If you have a guest that comes and you know the first name, please use the first name. So, hey, Mauricio, welcome to whatever hotel you are in. And those are, you know, different paths because 99% of the employees are not used to it. But I always explain why. I would like to have this, you know, basically breaking barriers kind of attitude. And once you explain the why, the questions come. And I need and want to have this interaction with my people so that when they do the questions, they can, you know, understand even more why, you know, certain things need to be done. But you need to give the people the feeling that they are safe, that they can ask the questions, and trying to make them understand that whatever they do, it is the right way forward with the procedures and everything else, but they need to understand it from their own hearts, not because I say so. And then you come to a whole different level of service.
And like when you're saying now, like you're talking about people and said about first name, and it reminds me a little bit of the technology, because nowadays, like I get a lot of of introductions to tech companies and they describe the products. And the way that they describe is basically that as a hotel, you can collect data in every touch point, and then you can design this customer experience according to the segmentation that you put them, and then you can mark them. But when you go to reality, it doesn't work quite as the vendors sold, right? Like there are lots of API connections that here doesn't work, or maybe the touch points are not well designed. Another thing is, one thing is collect data. The second thing is analyzing the data and taking action on it. So how you that create that experience before all this tech surge use an untech way to collect this data and get people to recognize their stuff, and what you could tell to the hoteliers today?
Now, you know, technology is definitely on its way to become amazing. I have a feeling we're not there yet, but you know, every time that you come to a hotel and somebody says, hello, Mauricio, nice to meet you. This is what you started the podcast with. You know, you feel immediately, hey, somebody recognizes me and I feel important. Now, that technology will bring, you know, at a certain moment, the AI will just figure out with LinkedIn and whatever, and at check-in, you will get automatically a photo of the person that, you know, wherever social media it comes from. And if the staff is properly trained, then it's magical. You know, hello, Mauricio, how are you? You know, one of the technology companies, one of the managers came into my hotel once, and I did not have this technology, but I had a very clever receptionist at the time. Yeah, because there were X amount of check-ins left. There was a big queue, and she knew that there was only one single traveler that arrived. And of course, she knew his name as well. And when he checked in, there was a big queue. He was tired and all that, but the receptionist, it was prepaid. She said, here you go, here's your card. And she knew exactly who he was, used his name. And he still, until this day, you know, 15 years later, is using this as an example of this wow moment. Okay, how the hell did they know? Yeah.
So basically, it's like practicing the attention to detail. Would that be a big secret in providing that exceptional service?
I think because attention to detail is always important. Yeah, but many hotels don't have the luxury to go really into those details. You know, if you have a hotel that charges, you know, a very big amount of money per night, and that amount allows you to give the exceptional service because you have more people per person, you have better technology per person, yeah, that all works. But there's average thousands of other hotels that don't have this luxury. They can't play with the average rate on a daily basis. So I would find a few things that are important. And my case is very simple. When I became general manager of my first hotel, it was a privately owned business. I really scratched behind my ear and I said, will I just copy everything that I've learned in the last 10 years, the way that hotels are operating for the last 100 years? And the answer was no, I will not do that. Yeah, and then I decided to buy one of the best beds you can buy in a hotel. People were sleeping so well that they woke up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had many guests, they didn't make their checkout. They just overslept. But it also became then, okay, if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you still want breakfast or maybe lunch. So I said, okay, you want lunch or breakfast? It's fine. So I created 24 hours a day breakfast. And those are exceptional things that if your operations allow, it really creates a wow effect. So, yeah.
So regardless if you can have the tech or not, being guest-centric is the heart of hospitality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nah-Dja, thank you very much. Next week, we'll be talking about customer feedback and employee growth. So I can't wait to have that discussion with you as well. And for you that listening today, hang on, because next we will have Wäel Mashini talking about hotel design. Thanks for listening, Schulering. I'll talk to you soon. Hello, hospitality, and welcome back to another episode of the Schulering Hub, Talking Hospitality. I'm your host, Mauricio. Schiller, with the weird accent, but one day you'll figure it out why. And today I have with me the founder of Mashini, a design company for hospitalities. Wäel Mashini. Sorry if I missed your name again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mauricio. You got it this time, actually.
You are natural from Jordan. You've been living in New York for quite some time. Now you are based in Amsterdam. And in our previous chat, you said that you almost gave it all up when it came to design and architecture. Tell me this story, please.
Yes, that's right. It's a long story, and without getting into too many details, but after 5 years of architecture school, I was so ready, and I can imagine many architecture students face this. They're so ready to jump into practice and start working. But then soon enough, you start to get disenfranchised by how disconnected practice is from what you're studying. What you're studying is very concept driven, and practice is, practical, and there are other factors that you don't take into consideration. So with that said, I started practicing as an architect over 10 years ago, and soon enough, after a few years into my career, I was disenfranchised by the industry, and I wasn't really sure. I was feeling a little bit unmotivated, let's say, by my career, having worked in corporate and a design company. And that's when I made the switch to hospitality design. And I think, like I mentioned to you, it really ignited something within me that, got me more excited about the industry. And yeah, haven't looked back since.
Like, how did it happen? How did the hospitality fall to you?
Yeah, so I started my career in Jordan, then quickly moved to New York, and also was working in architecture there. And then my last project at this well-known architecture firm was actually a restaurant. And that piqued my interest. It got me interested more into hospitality design, but also in the interior world. It's quite different. And I have to admit, at the time, a lot of architects, look down at interior design or interior architecture as decoration and, almost from a place of superiority. So I was quite hesitant at the beginning making the switch, but once I tried basically my first attempt at hospitality design, I was all in, and I decided to make the switch into a company that specializes in hospitality design. And that's when I joined Rockwell Group in New York and started really my career focusing purely on hospitality.
That's so awesome. It's so cool how hospitality seems to grab people instead of like people going for it. It's such a cool thing. I noticed that you are actually an avid traveler as well, right? You like to travel a lot. And do you use that as an opportunity to explore a little bit of the designs around the world? How does travel help you?
Yes. So, I mean, really, to be fair, what got me into hospitality is the storytelling aspect. And I felt that was what was lacking in my career in architecture, is having this added layer of storytelling and speaking directly to the guests, kind of sharing with them a certain experience. So I think that's where also my love for travel comes from, that same type of sharing other cultures, sharing people's stories. So yes, I absolutely love to travel. And about 2 years ago, after After living in New York for 8 years, I decided to take a sabbatical. I traveled to about 20 countries and just decided to make this almost my own self-paced research, where over the year I was just experiencing hospitality around the world. I was doing remote work at the time and, decided to really dive in to different cultures and places.
So let me see if I understand that well. You took basically a gap time to just travel around and visit 20 countries to do a kind of research while enjoying and working as a nomad.
Pretty much, yeah. Basically.
How was that?
It was an incredible experience. I'm sure, that's it was, especially coming out of the pandemic, I realized that there is this, people were calling it revenge travel. Everyone wanted to travel. Everyone wanted to go experience the world after being cooped up in our homes for 2 years. So that was also one of the factors, of course, but it was an incredible experience. And it showed me how much there is in the world, how, there's so many different ways to share hospitality, to design hotels, to experience different places. So it was one of, if not the best experience so far. Yeah.
And you just told me about what captivates you the most there in the design of hospitality was the storytelling. So you could incorporate that storytelling into your work. How does that work? How does the storytelling and design work together?
Yeah, so to me, at least, the story is the essential keystone, right, of the project, of a hospitality project. Where do you start? Why does this project exist? What is the story behind the place? And what story do you want to tell as a hotel owner or developer? So that's really the key to any project, and every other aspect, the way that I see it, kind of ties back to that story, whether it's the design, whether it's the communications, whether it's your recruitment and how you attract talent. It all comes down to people connecting to the story that you're telling.
So, that's super cool to understand that the storytelling brings back to every single point. When I'll have to be honest, when it comes to design, I'm horrible. Okay, I can't design my own room. I can't see the things together. But when I was doing my research about hotel design, I came across the 7 components of designing a hotel concept. And story is the very, very first. But then they also explore people, space, identity, service, content, channels. How do you see this all playing up, having that story as a central piece?
Absolutely. I think having, like I said, having the story as the base of your hospitality project kind of makes your job easier in every other aspect. The services become streamlined and it ties, it kind of tells your story through a human touch. The spaces and how you design the interiors or the exterior also relates back to that story and what you're trying to tell. And, the people also connect with you based off that story. So that's, to me, what distinguishes between a hotel that you will never forget versus a hotel that you forget the next day after checkout. The story is what you remember versus most people, forget the details of what the bed looked like or what the side table was and so on. This all feeds into the story, but it's not necessarily the cornerstone of the project.
And I saw that you like to actually work with innovation, right? You like to innovate the way that the hotel design is. You like to disrupt a little bit of the idea of hotel designing. So what does it mean, really?
I know this. So innovation is, to me at least, again, innovation within the context of hospitality design is being able to look at where is the industry going and how can we kind of innovate on what's existing, looking at the status quo and looking at trends and making the connections between them, but also looking at design and hotels from a completely fresh perspective. Why do we need to take everything the way that it was done before? Why don't we do things differently? And having this fresh lens to develop the design from, for me, leads to innovation, because that's where you're questioning things rather than taking for granted the status.
So you like to make things differently. And what is different in a hotel? How can you explore a little bit? Because maybe our listeners here may be that ones that are just thinking like, no, a hotel is a hotel. You need to have this, and that. So how would you work with someone that has built hotels before for their own portfolio and now are saying like, no, hotels have these aspects and what you're supposed to change here?
Well, this is where we have to draw the line between a corporation rolling out hotels and that's one model of doing things. Of course, there can be innovation with that, but there are standards that need to be met across different countries, and those are kind of replicated, right? So with that type of scale and rollout model, it's you can innovate. It's a bit more challenging to innovate and question because you have to have consistency also. And that's also why guests choose to go to certain hotels, because they know what to expect. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the independent model, it's a lot easier and you have a lot more flexibility and room to innovate because you're not starting off with a certain template or guidelines. You're almost starting off with these questions, the bigger questions of what do we want to do? How can we do what's been done, but better? So within both contexts, you can definitely innovate. I think there's a lot more room to play with the independent hotels for sure.
And like, just something that popped into my mind now, like what is a more exciting project? Brand new idea, someone that just said like, look, I want to design something like this, help me to do this. Or someone that has a property and wants to reimagine that property and get a very new, fresh look. What would be the most interesting project for you personally?
It's hard to choose. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say both, probably. Both. One being, I think that the first one, when you start off with almost a blank canvas, it can be definitely more challenging. So you have to have some kind of constraints, whether looking at the site, the context, even budget, things that designers try to not look at. These are all constraints that help you form the project. And in the second situation, you mentioned renovation. I think there's a lot more potential to be nuanced because you're working with something that's existing and you have to really challenge what's there and think outside the box to create almost an entirely new experience, right? So both could be interesting. If I had to pick one, probably first.
Start fresh is always better, I think. I don't know. But like, I think that it should be super refreshing also to get property that has been serving the market for quite some time and give that fresh new look. Probably it's quite nerve-wracking sometimes as well, because like there is just some expectations because of the location and how it looked like before to compare to when you have a very fresh idea that is just bringing onto the market, so you can prepare everyone for that fresh idea. So it's I wouldn't know what to choose myself actually, but I decided to ask you first. And like how sustainability has been playing up with hotel design, because it is a buzzword. A lot of people are talking about, a lot of people are concerned, and it should be already in the project of building hotels. So how has it influenced this hotel design today?
Yeah, so sustainability, I mean, it is a buzzword, of course, and I think it can be sometimes thrown around lightly. I think within the context of hospitality, the responsibility of who needs to be the champion for sustainability within hotel development is traditionally on the architect, right? So there are certain requirements that sometimes a building has to meet, such as LEED or BREEAM and so on, and these certifications guide you to general aspects of sustainability. But I think we really need to start as an industry to move past sustainability and more into regeneration, because sustainability is speaking to sustaining what's currently happening, which is not that great climate-wise, right? So regeneration is improving or leaving a place better than when you arrive. So I think that's the conversation we need to start to have. And on another note, they're having worked in different types of projects, especially in the United States, where sustainability is I would say less important than it is in Europe. Now, living in the Netherlands, almost every project is truly sustainable. And in the US, I saw there was some companies were greenwashing and just using sustainability for marketing tactics rather than actually having an authentic strategy towards sustainability. I think slowly we're going to see that in order to raise funds or in order to get funding, these ESG requirements, which include sustainability, will become a must over the next 5 to 10 years. These are becoming a must in order for hotels to get the funding that they need to continue developing.
And what's the biggest challenge of incorporating sustainability into the hotel design? Where is the gold mine and where is the challenge?
The challenge is, there are many challenges, but at least from my perspective, the challenge is that the more sustainable or regenerative approach is not necessarily the one that cost effective. So sometimes sustainability does have a price tag and it can be higher, not always, but it can be higher than the counterpart, which is, using uncertified wood or using building techniques that are not sustainable and so on. So with that, it really comes down to who holds this responsibility towards the sustainability. Because if it's left up to the asset managers and so on, some people are looking at a spreadsheet and making decisions of sustainability like that. And then if it's left up to the designers, there are many different type of guidance. So really, who is the champion for sustainability in a hospitality project? I think that's going to be something that we need to answer as an industry. I don't know the answer myself, and start to actually have a lot more transparency around this subject as well.
Yeah, I see it as it goes back to the storytelling, right? Like if the hotel introduces sustainability, introduces the environment into their storytelling, and this is something that they sell, then it makes sense to go that extra mile and invest that extra money into become a very sustainable design, right? And probably if they're just doing some greenwashing and using sustainability as the buzzword just to tick the ones that they must tick, or just to try to create a little selling touch points here and there, then they will be analyzing the spreadsheet and making the decisions and maybe even cheat on what they do and what they sell. Well,
absolutely,
that's true.
Absolutely. Yes. And to your point, when you're incorporating sustainability or regeneration into the storytelling, that is a key aspect that guests connect to, that can enhance marketing, that can enhance employee recruitment and retention and so on, working for an ethical company. But at the same time, that cannot be the only reason why hospitality developers choose the more sustainable route or the greener route. That cannot be the only reason. It needs to there needs to be some level of compliance that is given, like I said, I think from funding at a funding level, at an early stage level, that's going to be critical for hoteliers to actually get the funding that they need to develop the properties. So it's more than just a marketing tactic at this point. And I think the guests are aware of that, and more people, and even, the public sector and government agencies are aware of that as well. So there's going to be a lot more policy around it, and it's exciting to see actually how that pans out.
It amazes me when I see a hotel that says we don't clean your room every day or don't wash your towels every day because they're sustainable.
Even up to the guests.
Who is selling? And look, how is the process of working with a hotel designer for anyone that hasn't done that before?
It's an amazing process that, to see a vision, to see initial sketches. And I've done this a lot in my work, where I'd go back, 3 years ago when the project was just starting, or 2 years when the project was just starting, and to see the really initial sketches and the initial plans on tracing paper of what, as designers, we were envisioning and how the hotel project actually turned out. And it can look a lot different, but the actual essence and the story and the vision of that, it is truly, seeing that process manifest and become a physical space that people inhabit and use on a daily basis is magical. So I think that aspect of working with hotel designers, you need to be constantly questioning, constantly open to different possibilities. Design is a very subjective field in general. Of course, there are best practices, but one person can perceive a space as beautiful, the other can perceive it as completely wrong, and design is highly subjective. So the challenge in hospitality design is filtering between all the noise, all the different stakeholders, right? You have ownership groups, you have brands, you have the operators and the designers and engineers and architects and so on. So all of these stakeholders have their different opinions and they have something to say, and everyone kind of wants to steer the project in a different direction. So being able to filter between all of this noise and guide the project and make sure that whatever is moving the needle is actually happening, that's, I think, the biggest challenge in hospitality.
And if I'm gonna come to work with a hotel designer for the first time, what's the step-by-step? Do I show you my vision and you sketch that vision and then we start working, or how is really the work? How does it work, the step-by-step?
Yeah, so the design process is very, it can look linear, but it's very non-linear. So, but really it all boils down to layers of detail that are added on to an initial concept. So you start out with looking, of course, at the site, at the location, at what do we have to work with, the context, is there a brand, what are the guidelines, all of these components that start to give you variables to work with. And from there, the designers usually, at least in my experience, there are some, you pitch different options. You start out kind of showing different ends of the spectrum to a client to test where are they on the scale of things. And you show them almost options that are completely opposite to each other to try and land somewhere. And that's the initial phase. Once you've landed somewhere on a concept, on a vision, and then the process after that is taking it and making it work and detailing it. And if you're not familiar with the architecture and design industry, we work basically in phases. So you start out with a concept, typically, then that gets developed into a schematic design, then design development, and then you end up with a construction drawing set, and that's really what goes to get built. So it's a series of stages, and all of these stages are additional layers and details that are added to the initial concept.
And what's the biggest challenge for the designers during this process?
I would say the biggest challenge for the designers is not losing that initial vision, because, like I said, there are so many factors that come into play. The fun part is over at the concept, really, because that's when you're able to dream. But after that point, reality starts to kick in, and engineers start to tell you, how are we going to make this work? There are timelines that need to be met. There's budget that needs to be met, sustainability requirements, and so on. So how do all of these factors come into play without changing that initial vision? I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And I think that's what sets apart a great designer from a designer that kind of lets their vision become diluted by all these other factors.
And one question that I'd love to know your opinion on that, but what do you see more, beauty or practicalness? It's practical, the room's practical, or it's beauty? Which side of the spectrum?
For me personally?
Yeah.
I would say, I'm at 60-40, 60 practical, 40 beauty. Just, with my training, I was a designer for a big part of my career, but I was also a project manager, making sure that the practical side has to work. So that kind of informs where I stand right now.
Yeah, and so no plugs hidden elsewhere, completely opposite to the bed or things like this, right?
No. And you're gonna hit your head on the sideline when you make out. You need to think of all of these things.
Exactly, it amazes me when you see like one plug only and completely hidden away from everything else of the room. It's like, how is that possible? So if we could think about the future, that's the game that we like to play here. How do you see where we're going into hospitality or even in design of hotels for the next decade?
Yeah, I love this question because no one really knows and we're all just guessing, right? So my guess would be that the industry will continue to be fragmented, and there will continue to be more and more subcategories in the hospitality industry. And what I mean by that is when companies like Airbnb came into play, over 15 years ago or 14 years ago, that everyone thought that hotels are dead and that's it. But all it did was create more options for the guest. And that trend has continued to perpetuate. So now there are more niche hotels, boutique hotels, unique experience. And as the industry continues to grow, we cannot just keep repeating what exists. So I think the industry will we will see sub-niches within niches and subcategories of hotels that are catering to, a very small fragment of people. And that makes also the experience very personalized. So I think that trend is going to keep going, and it's really interesting to see. I'm not going to mention the two-letter acronym that everyone talks about, AI, and how that's how that's affecting the industry. Of course, that we'll see how that happens, but at least from a physical aspect, I think there will be a lot more niche offerings in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've seen some extra luxurious properties in Mexico coming with 2 rooms. And it's amazing to see that shift into new categories and how that will play, how that be even profitable in the long term. It's quite interesting. I love your answer to that.
Thank you.
And tell me one thing, if you could leave here learning bomb, something that our hotelier listening today would take that from the okay, I learned something today. I needed that. What would you tell them?
Well, to answer, it's a difficult question to answer, because to pick one thing based on our conversation today, I would say hoteliers need to have a North Star. And that North Star is the story that they want to tell. And that is what guides the development, that guides the design, that guides who you hire, how you hire, and so on, and then how you speak to your guests and how you reach your guests. So it really guides the entire range of your hospitality offering. And this story continues to develop. I think it's a live document, if you want. But having this North Star will make all of your decisions a lot easier, will give your designers, your team, brilliant people that you want to work with, that feedback and necessary, it will give them as well a North Star to work towards, and an achievable goal and a direction to go towards. And I think any designer and any person working in this industry will really appreciate that.
Storytelling is so powerful. It amazes me how some hotels don't get it. Just they think that they are bed and breakfast place and this is enough. And I'm totally with you here. I believe that without a story, you are just really, between you and a hospital is just the doctors, right?
Good way to say it. You're just a bed in a room and a place to eat and sleep and seek safety. And like you said, Mauricio, I think hospitality is more than that. And how we define it should be guided by the stories that we tell, because as humans, that's how we connect, and we're emotional beings. So we need to connect off of the story. And that's what makes brands more powerful, for sure.
Help your guests share on Instagram, right?
Yes.
Well, that was awesome chat with you. Thank you very much for sharing all this knowledge, all your experience. How can our listeners contact you and get to know you more?
Yes, thank you so much, Mauricio. This was an excellent conversation. I appreciate you having me. Guests can find me on LinkedIn, Wäel Mashini. You can search my name, or you can go to my website, mashini.design. That's the best way to find me.
Awesome. We'll put all the links there, and let's give a big shout out to Omar as well, that basically kind of introduced us somehow. So thank you, Omar, for this. Awesome to have you in the show. Well, it was awesome chat. Thank you very much for sharing all this, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for
Schulering. Thanks for listening. Bye.